this is really shocking. A DNA in man's semen says he's another man who lives 5,000 miles away. This is by Emma Fiala on Minor Leashed. One Nevada man's semen is challenging everything we knew about forensic science. According to the recent New York Times story, one Nevada man is challenging everything we thought we knew about forensics. The man, Chris Long, underwent a bone marrow transplant 4 years ago during a battle with acute myeloid leukemia. The disease prevented Long's body from producing blood as it normally would, so he went on to receive a life-saving bone marrow transplant from a German stranger. Long, who is an IT worker at the Washoe County Sheriff's Department in Reno, Nevada, recovered following the procedure that 3 months later replaced his unhealthy cells with the donor's healthy blood-forming cells. And as a result, Long's blood contained the DNA of his German donor. But what about the DNA elsewhere in Long's body? Renee Romero, a colleague of Long, who ran the Washoe County Sheriff Department Forensics Lab, was curious and urged her coworkers to find out. Romero told Long, "We need to swab the heck out of you before you have this procedure to see how this DNA takes over your body." As a result of Romero's urging, Long had samples of DNA collected before the transplant. He said, "I didn't even know if I would live." Now, additional samples from numerous parts of his body were collected afterwards. In some areas of his body, Long's DNA was as well as the donor's were both found. Such was the case in swabs from Long's lips, cheeks, and tongue. Samples of his hair showed only Long's DNA. But the forensic team did not expect to find, however, was that 4 years after the bone marrow transplant, samples of Long's semen showed only the German donor's DNA. Long's told the Times, "I thought that it was pretty incredible that I can disappear and someone else can appear." Now, can you understand what that means? It means that Long, through his semen, would not be passing his DNA to his children. He would be passing somebody else's DNA to his children. Can you imagine? That's terribly astonishing. Now, Darby Steinmetz, the criminologist at the Washoe County Sheriff's Department, said, "We were kind of shocked that Chris was no longer present at all." According to the Times, Mr. Long had become a chimera, a technical term for the rare person with 2 sets of DNA. The word takes its name from a fire-breathing creature in Greek mythology composed of lion, goat, and serpent parts. Doctors and forensic scientists have long known that certain medical procedures turn people into chimeras, but where exactly a donor's DNA shows up beyond blood has rarely been studied with criminal applications in mind. Now, while has been known that the recipients of bone marrow transplant can throw a wrench in typical forensic investigations of crime scenes, the expectation has long been that the donor's DNA, as well as that of the actual person they're dealing with, will both be present. But what Long is experiencing raises entirely new questions of the use of DNA evidence in court cases. As the Time reports, the assumption among criminal investigators as they gather DNA evidence from a crime scene is that each victim and each perpetrator leaves behind a single identifying code, not 2, including that of a fellow who is 10 years younger and lives 1,000 miles away. It may seem unlikely, but it must be considered moving forward that the recipient of a bone marrow transplant, of which there are tens of thousands each year, may be able to commit a crime and end up implicating their donor, even if that person lives 5,000 miles away. And it turns out this very thing has happened in the past. During a criminal investigation in 2004, officials in Alaska uploaded a DNA profile found in semen to the DNA database. While there was a match, it matched a man who was in prison at the time of the crime. As it turns out, the man had undergone a bone marrow transplant, and the man's brother was eventually convicted. An employee of the Alaska State Scientific Crime Detection Laboratory in Anchorage, familiar with the case, heard of another case involving a bone marrow transplant that caused confusion during the investigation. A sexual assault victim's description of the attack was met with skepticism by investigators after a DNA analysis revealed there were two attackers, not one, as she reported. In this case, the victim was the recipient of a bone marrow transplant, and the second DNA profile was that of her donor. And in 2008, a visiting research scholar at the University of Northern Texas Center for Human Identification was working on identifying a victim of a traffic accident in South Korea. Blood from the scene indicated that the victim was a female, while the body appeared to belong to that of a male. Eventually, the victim's DNA was confirmed in a kidney, while the spleen and lungs both showed male and female DNA. The victim had been the recipient of a bone marrow transplant from his daughter. Thankfully, Long's colleague thought to ask the question and search for the answer. If it weren't for their curiosity, this unusual situation may have gone under the radar for years. But now the case has caught the eye of DNA analysts all over the world after the unexpected findings were presented in an international forensic science conference in September. But another question remains unanswered. What if Chris Long has a baby? Would he pass the German's DNA along to his child or his own? In Long's case, we'll likely never know, as he previously underwent a vasectomy, but the question is indeed an important one. However, according to 3 bone marrow transplant experts consulted by the Times, it should be impossible for such a procedure to result in the passing along of someone else's DNA. At least one doctor posits that it might have something to do with Long's having previously had a vasectomy, but they plan to investigate further to find out. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.